Shadow Pokemon are some of the most powerful Pokemon to obtain in Pokémon GO, and as of October 8th, we now have a new rotation of Rocket Grunts and Leaders. So in this video, I'm going to be covering the best Rocket Grunts to focus on to help you get some of the best Pokemon in the game, along with which ones actually have the potential to be Shadow Shiny. Now for those of you who are unfamiliar, Shadow Shiny Pokemon are some of the rarest Pokemon to get in the entire game. They have a shiny rate of 1 out of 64 from Team Leaders and 1 out of 256 from Rocket Grunts. Additionally, on top of that, Shadow Pokemon are also some of the most difficult to obtain with optimal IVs for raids and PvP. When it comes down to raid battles, you want to aim for the highest possible IVs, typically 3-star or higher, but for PvP IVs, it is a bit different. You essentially want to have low attack IVs and high defense and high stamina IVs, and the reason for this is because it allows you to level up your Pokemon the most before it hits the CP limit for Great League or Ultra League. Now with that being said, there are going to be some Pokemon that are exceptions because their max CP does not reach the limit, in which case you would just want to have the best IVs possible. If you want to quickly pull up good IVs for PvP, you can use this search string on screen. But now let's actually cover which Rocket Grunts are the best to focus on. So first of all, let's go ahead and start off with the Fire type Grunt, and they're going to have the dialogue, "Do you know how hot Pokemon Fire Breath can get?" So you're going to have available encounters with Torchic, Darumaka, and Vulpix. So Torchic can evolve into Blaziken. This Pokemon has relevance in the Raid/Gym meta as well as a Mega Evolution. If you do end up getting an IV spread that is at least 13, 13, 13, you could purify this for the Hundo and then use that as a Mega Evolution. Now on top of that, I also want to mention that you will need to get the exclusive Comday moveset for Blaziken, which is going to be Blast Burn. Blaze Kick after the recent meta changes is actually better now. If you guys actually want a reference point, Shadow Blaziken is actually about as powerful as a Reshiram with Fusion Flare, so keep that in mind as you're actually considering powering this thing up. Now Shadow Darumaka, when evolved into Shadow Darmanitan, is actually going to be a bit more powerful than Shadow Blaziken as a fire type attacker. For the ideal moveset, you want to go with Incinerate plus Overheat, and this Pokemon just mainly has relevance in the Raid/Gym meta. And then Vulpix, when it evolves into Ninetales, is going to have relevance in the Open Great League and Ultra League metas. Next up, let's take a look at the Water type Grunt, and the dialogue is going to read, "These waters are treacherous," so you're going to have access to these following Pokemon: Shelder, Barboach, Mudkip, and Magikarp. Now for Shelder, this Pokemon actually awards you 1000 Stardust per catch, which is really awesome. And then for Magikarp, this Pokemon offers a 1000 Stardust purification, which is the cheapest one you can actually do. Now in terms of meta relevance, when Barboach evolves into Wishcash, it's going to have relevance in the Open Great League and Ultra League metas. For Mudkip, when it evolves into Swampert, it will need the exclusive Comday moveset Hydro Cannon, but this Pokemon has relevance in the Open Great League, the Open Ultra League, Master League Premier Cup, the Raid/Gym meta, and it also has a Mega Evolution. In terms of the overall meta relevance for a Water type attacker, Shadow Swampert isn't ranked super high. Like, you definitely have a lot of better options out there, so I mean, it's okay if you want to purify this one. Otherwise, I would actually recommend against it. But given how much the meta has changed over time, like the only one that I would not recommend purifying would be like Shadow Kyogre. Don't ever do that. Moving on over to our last Pokemon though, we do have Magikarp, which evolves into Gyarados, and very similar to Swampert, this Pokemon has relevance in the Open Great League, Ultra League, Master League Premier Cup, the Raid/Gym meta, as well as a Mega Evolution. So once again, same thing that I said for Swampert. If you do end up getting a good IV spread, you could also purify that for the Hundo. Now if you are going to be using this Pokemon for raid battles, you can go with Hydro Pump, which is a non-legacy exclusive moveset, but if you're going to be using this Pokemon for PvP, you definitely want to have the exclusive Comday moveset Aqua Tail. We have Grass type Pokemon up next with the dialogue, "Don't tangle with us." So you're going to have access to these three Pokemon: Trico, Snover, and Hoppip. Every single one of these Pokemon does have meta relevance. We'll start off with Trico here. So when evolved into Sceptile, this Pokemon is going to have relevance in the Raid/Gym meta as well as a Mega Evolution, but you're going to need the exclusive Comday moveset Frenzy Plant. Now in terms of its overall ranking, Shadow Sceptile is alright. Like, there's definitely quite a few options that are going to be above it, like Kartana, Meowscarada, Decidueye, Shadow Venusaur, Shadow Tangrowth, Zarude. So I mean, when it comes down to it, yeah, it's not like the most important Shadow Pokemon to focus on, which is why, again, if you do end up getting that purifiable Hundo, it could be a consideration if you don't already have it. Now we also have Snover, which evolves into Obama-Snow. This Pokemon has relevance in the Open Great League and Ultra League metas, along with a Mega Evolution. I actually did end up purifying my Shadow to get the Hundo for this Pokemon, so case in point right there, it's totally on the table if you guys want to do that. And then finally, we do have Hoppip, which evolves into Jumpluff for the Open Great League, and what's actually really nice about this is that you don't need to have the exclusive Comday moveset anymore, Acrobatics. Aerial Ace is actually slightly better now. Taking a closer look at Jumpluff though, in the Open Great League, it's currently ranked within the top 10, which is incredible. Now personally speaking, I have been using this Pokemon during this season of GBL, and it has been so much fun to run. Next up, let's take a look at the Electric type Rocket Grunt. So the dialogue is going to read, "Get ready to be shocked." So you have a Alolan Geodude, which has a 1k purification, really nice to see, and then we also have the shiny Shadow Magnemite, which is potentially available as well. Speaking of Magnemite though, let's start off with that Pokemon first, which evolves all the way up into Magnezone, I believe with the Sinnoh Stone. Now Shadow Magnezone actually got a really nice boost with the recent raid changes. It's actually the #1 electric type attacker to power up in the game currently. It also has relevance as a Great League attacker as well as an Ultra League attacker. Now specifically for the Ultra League spread, if you decided to build this, you would get dual functionality as a raid attacker as well, It powers up to around level 35, which actually has the same power potential as a level 40 Zekrom with Fusion Bolt. Probably one of the best Pokemon to hunt in the game right now. Now, certain Team Rocket Grunts do actually have the chance to offer up their second lineup Pokemon, in which case LuckyBunz is going to be one of those Pokemon. Now, when evolved into Electivire, this Pokemon is really good to use in the Raid/Gym meta. Flying-type attackers are going to be next with a dialogue battle against my Flying-type Pokemon. You're going to have a few shinies available, a shiny Shadow Zubat as well as shiny Shadow Gligar. For Gligar, this Pokemon is only going to be available from the second slot. Additionally, on top of that, we also have Pidgey, Starly, and Zubat, which are all 1k purifications. So Flying-type Grunts definitely have a lot going on here. You have multiple Shadow Shinies, as well as 1k purifications. It's definitely a top Pokemon Grunt I would focus on. Taking a look at the meta relevance now, though, we have Pidgey, which evolves into Pidgeot. This Pokemon has meta relevance as a Mega Evolution, and that's kind of it. It used to be a lot better, to be honest, but unfortunately, after the recent changes in Season 20, Pidgeot is no longer that relevant in the Open Great League or Ultra League metas. So once again, if you do end up getting an IV spread that is at least 13, 13, 13, you could purify it for the hundo. Now we also have Starly, which evolves into Staraptor. This Pokemon does have an exclusive Calm Day moveset, which is going to be Gust. Now I do wish I could tell you that Wing Attack is not going to be that much worse off compared to Gust, but I just can't do that. Gust is significantly better than Wing Attack, so if you want to run this as a raid attacker, you're going to need to have this moveset. When it comes down to running this Pokemon in the Open Ultra League, though, you actually want to have Quick Attack instead, so Gust isn't that big of a deal. It's mainly just if you want to run this as a Flying type attacker, which is actually one of the top Flying type attackers in the game currently. Now I did mention that Gligar is going to be available from the second slot, so you do have a small chance of actually encountering this Pokemon. This was a lot better previously in the Open Great League meta. It is still going to be relevant, but just not as good anymore. To be completely honest though, it's still ranked pretty good. It comes in at rank 102 in the Open Great League, which really isn't that bad at all. So you can totally build that if you get a good IV spread. You also have the option to evolve it into Gliscor for the Open Ultra League meta. For the Poison type Grunts, you're going to have the Dialogue coiled and ready to strike, and then for the encounters, you're going to have access to Koffing, Hisuian Sneasel, Krogunk, Nidorino, and Nidorina. Now, Koffing can actually have a Shadow Shiny, which is really cool, and we did just recently have a special event where you could evolve Koffing into Galarian Weezing, but it's currently unknown if we're going to get anything like this in the future. Previously, we did have the ability to do this with Cubone into Alolan Marowak, but we haven't actually got that feature available since, and that was like a few years ago. So on the off chance though that we do end up getting this ability back again at some point, like event specific, you may want to hold on to some good IV spreads for Great League and Ultra League for potentially a Galarian Weezing. Now for Hisuian Sneasel, when you evolve this into Sneasler, it has relevance in the Open Ultra League, and the same can be said when you evolve Nidorina into Nidoqueen for the Open Ultra League. Ghost type Pokemon are going to be up next with a dialogue Ki. So from the Ghost type encounters, you're going to have access to Drifloon, Golett, and Duskull in the first slot, and then from the second slot, you're going to have access to Dusclops, Golett, and Sableye. Now Sableye can potentially be Shadow Shiny, and it's also going to offer you 750 Stardust per catch, which is really nice. Now for basically all these Pokemon, Drifloon into Drifblim, Golett into Golurk, and Duskull into Dusknoir, they're all going to have relevance in the Open Great League and the Open Ultra League. When it comes down to Dusknoir specifically though, you're going to want to have the exclusive Calm Day moveset Shadow Ball. And then finally for Sableye, this is going to be relevant in the Open Great League as the Shadow. The Purified Sableye has actually gone down in the meta quite a bit now, so I wouldn't recommend purifying this. I would just go with the Shadow variant. Now for the Psychic type Grunts, you're going to have the dialogue, Are you scared of Psychics that use Unseen Power? The encounters are going to be with Gothita as well as Solosis, but neither of these Pokemon are actually good right now, so I would just skip this Grunt entirely. Taking a look at the Dark type Grunt next, so I will not say the same thing. This dialogue is going to be wherever there is light, there is also shadow. So from this Grunt, you're going to have access to Shadow Cacnea, Shadow Alolan Rattata, and then Shadow Stunky. When it comes down to Cacnea, this Pokemon can potentially be Shadow Shiny, but that's basically all of the relevance there. Now for Alolan Rattata, this Pokemon is going to have the 1000 Purification, which is really nice, but it also has the option to Purify into Raticate if you get a good IV spread for the Open Great League. And the reason why this Pokemon is actually better purified is because it needs to have Return. And then finally, to round things off, we have Stunky, which evolves into Skuntank, which has relevance in the Open Great League and Ultra League metas. Bug type Pokemon are going to be up next with a dialogue, Go my Super Bug Pokemon. So from these encounters, you're going to have access to Scyther, Caterpie, and Venipede. And then from the second slot, you're going to have access to Shelmet, Carablast, and Anorith. Now both Scyther as well as Anorith can potentially be Shadow Shiny, and then Caterpie is also going to be a 1k Purification Pokemon. Now in terms of meta relevance though, there isn't actually a whole lot going on here for the Bug type Pokemon. When you evolve Scyther into Scizor, it does have relevance in the Open Great League and Ultra League metas, but it's kind of more on the niche side now. And then we do also have Carablast, which evolves into Escavalier. Unfortunately though, after the counter nerfed, this Pokemon isn't meta relevant anymore. but it was really meta relevant for a long time, so it might be a good idea to actually keep an eye out for some good IV spreads in case the meta does change again, which is pretty likely. Fighting type Pokemon are going to be up next with the dialogue "This buff physique isn't just for show." So for these encounters, you're going to have access to Machop, Mankey, and Timber in the first slot, along with Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan, and Girder in the second slot. Now going through the encounters, Machop can potentially be Shadow Shiny, and it also has relevance as Machoke in the Open Great League, along with Machamp in the Open Great League, Ultra League, and the Raid/Gym meta. Now when it comes down to PvP for the Machop evolutions, unfortunately they do require Legacy moveset, so that's kind of a big downside. So when it comes down to running this Pokemon in the Raid/Gym meta, having Counter plus Dynamic Punch is going to be fine. But if you want to go with PvP, you will need to have Karate Chop. Now Mankey is actually going to be one of the new Shadow Pokemon featured during this event, and we're actually going to have an upcoming Calm Day for Mankey, where you're going to be able to evolve into Annihilate to get the Legacy moveset Rage Fist. So even though Annihilate did actually get nerfed recently, you probably still want to remove Frustration on your Shadow Mankey, that way you can actually evolve them during the Calm Day to get Rage Fist. Now finally we do have Timber, which evolves into Conkeldurr. This is arguably one of the rarer Pokemon to encounter from the fighting type Grunts, but if you are able to encounter it, Shadow Conkeldurr with Counter plus Dynamic Punch is really good as a fighting type attacker. The only Pokemon that are actually going to be better than it are going to be Keldeo as well as Terrakion. Now I do still think one of the biggest appeals to these fighting type Grunts is the potential to get Shiny Shadow Machop, and regardless of the IVs, I would still probably evolve it and power it up to at least level 40, maybe like level 35. Now for normal type Pokemon, the dialogue is going to be normal does not mean weak. In terms of the only Pokemon worth focusing on, you have Shiny Shadow Stantler as well as Shiny Shadow Meowth from the second slot, and then Meowth also awards 500 Stardust per catch, so it's a pretty good Pokemon, but again, it's pretty rare to encounter because it is going to be in that second slot. And then basically when it comes down to meta relevance, none of these Pokemon are actually going to be that good to use in Pokemon Go in both raids or even PvP. Moving on over to our rock types, we have the dialogue Let's Rock and Roll, and the only Pokemon that's going to be good here is going to be Roggenrola, which evolves into Gigalith. This does require a lot of candy, so hopefully some of you guys do have that, otherwise you're probably not going to be able to evolve this anytime soon. It's going to take you a bit of time. But that being said, Gigalith in the overall rock-type meta is ranked really well. Now you do actually want to have the exclusive Calm Day moveset Meteor Beam for your Shadow Gigalith, so I probably wouldn't evolve them right now, but you know, again, like the main focus if you want to actually use it against Team Go Rocket Grunts, for example, is having Smackdown. Like having Smackdown is really important for all these Pokemon. Basically every single one of the top Pokemon in the rock-type category has access to Smackdown, so Shadow Gigalith, I mean, if you don't have Shadow Rampardos or Shadow Rampireor, definitely going to be a top Pokemon to focus on getting. Ground-type Pokemon are going to be up next, and the dialogue is going to read, "You'll be defeated into the ground." Now for the encounters, we have access to Drillbur, Rhyhorn, and Wooper in the first slot, and then Drillbur, Rhyhorn, and Vibrava in the second slot. So you have some really good opportunity right here to get Drillbur as well as Rhyhorn, which are both super meta relevant in the Raid/Gym meta. So first of all, let's take a look at Drillbur, which evolves into Excadrill. This Pokemon has relevance in the Open Ultra League as well as the Open Master League meta, along with the Raid/Gym meta like I just mentioned. Taking a look at Rhyhorn next, which evolves into Rhyperior, you do want to have the exclusive Calm Day moveset Rock Wrecker, but if you are able to actually get this Pokemon with good IVs, I mean, it is so good against rocket battles. Like the flying type Grunts get destroyed by Smackdown plus Rock Wrecker. I do not regret it at all giving it the Elite TM, so just wanted to let you guys know that right now. It also has relevance in the Open Master League if you do end up getting like a really good IV spread, so I'm talking like anything close to the hundo. But overall, guys, like for the Raid/Gym meta, for rocket battles, and for the Open Master League, Rhyperior is definitely one of the best Pokemon to invest into. During the last rotation as well, this Pokemon was only available in the second slot, so the fact that it's going to be available in the first slot right now is really awesome. Now we do also have Wooper, which evolves into Quagsire, and this has relevance in the Open Great League meta. You do want to have the exclusive Calm Day moveset Aqua Tail on it though, that's really important. And then finally we do have Vibrava, which evolves into Flygon. This has relevance in the Open Great League and Ultra League metas. Ice type Pokemon are going to be up next, so the dialogue is going to read, "You're going to be frozen in your tracks." Now we do actually have a Shadow Shiny for Sneasel, which is actually a really cool one. I did end up getting this like a really long time ago, and honestly the IVs were not great, but I still powered it up past level 30. And to be honest, I'm actually completely fine with that because Shadow Weavile is currently the second best ice type attacker in the game, which is basically on par with Shadow Mamoswine. Like they pretty much have the same relevance here. We do also have Snorunt, which evolves into Frostlass. This has relevance in the Open Great League meta. And then we also have Alolan Sandshrew, which evolves into Alolan Sandslash, relevant in the Open Great League and Ultra League metas. Steel type Pokemon are going to have the dialogue, "You're no match for my Iron Will." And we're going to have the encounters Alolan Sandshrew, Ferroseed, Alolan Diglett in the first slot. And then for the second slot, we're going to have Skarmory, Lairon, and Metang. So first of all, Lairon is going to be a 1k purification, same thing with Aeron, but we don't actually have Aeron available in the first slot, so just wanted to mention that. Now in terms of meta relevance, we have Alolan Sandshrew, which I just mentioned, so I'm not going to talk about that again. We have Ferroseed, which evolves into Ferrothorn, relevant in the Open Great League and Ultra League. We have Skarmory relevant in the Open Great League even after the recent meta changes where, it got nerfed quite a bit. It's still kind of relevant there. And then we do also have Lairon, which evolves into Aggron, which has a Mega Evolution. Not that the Mega is actually used for anything like attacking wise, but once again, if you do end up getting that IV spread where it could be purified for the hundo, that could be kind of cool to have. And then finally we have Metang, which evolves into Metagross, arguably like the GOAT. And this Pokemon is going to be relevant in the Open Master League, the Raid/Gym meta, as well as a future Mega Evolution. So you will need to have the exclusive Calm Day moveset Meteor Mash on this, but if you actually hold on to your Beldum until December Calm Day, you can evolve it to get it for free. For the Fairy-type Grunts, we're going to have the dialogue Check Out My Cute Pokemon, and honestly guys, these are some of the rarest Grunts to encounter in the game next to the Dragon-type Grunts. So if you do happen to encounter one, do not skip it. So in terms of the encounters, you're going to have access to Alolan Vulpix, Mawile, and Snubbull in the first slot. And then for the second slot, you're going to have access to Snubbull, Kirlia, and Granbull. So first of all, we do have Mawile, which can potentially be Shadow Shiny, and it also has relevance as a Great League attacker in the Open meta. We also have Alolan Vulpix, which evolves into Alolan Ninetales, has relevance in the Open Great League and Ultra League. And we have Kirlia in the second slot, which when evolved into Gardevoir, has relevance as a raid attacker along with the Mega Evolution if you decide you want to purify it, which I would not recommend doing because Shadow Kirlia, Shadow Ralts, really rare to encounter. We do actually have Shadow Ralts as a team leader lineup this time, so maybe not as rare anymore. But to be honest, the main point I'm trying to make here is that I would not purify it if you do get that purifiable hundo. It's just too rare of a Pokemon. Kirlia also has a split evolution into Gallade if it is male, which has relevance in the Open Great League and Ultra League. So basically, you either want to evolve it into Gardevoir for the Raid/Gym meta or Gallade for the PvP meta. Finally, our last Rocket Grunt is going to be the Dragon Grunt, which is going to have the dialogue Roar. How did that sound? So in terms of the encounters, you have Dratini, Bagon, and Gible. You also have the potential to get Shiny Shadow Dratini as well as Shiny Shadow Bagon. So first of all, when you evolve Dratini into Dragonair, it has relevance in the Open Great League meta, and then when you actually evolve it all the way up into Dragonite, it has relevance in the Open Great League, Ultra League, and Master League metas, along with the Raid/Gym meta. Now for Dragonite in the Raid/Gym meta, you ideally want to go with Dragon Tail plus Outrage, or if you do have the Legacy Calm Day moveset Draco Meteor, that is going to be preferred, but it's honestly not that big of a difference. Taking a look at Bagon next, when evolved into Salamence, it has relevance in the Raid/Gym meta, and it also has a Mega Evolution. Now Bagon actually did have a Calm Day earlier this year, Calm Day Classic to be specific, but that also means you could evolve this Pokemon during December, just like Metagross, to get it with the exclusive Calm Day moveset Outrage. Basically, my recommendation is going to be if you are able to encounter at least a few Shadow Bagon during this event, remove Frustration, and then evolve them during December to get the exclusive moveset Outrage. Even though Draco Meteor is technically better, I still think having the exclusive Calm Day moveset is going to be something you want to focus on. Anyways, though, moving on over to our last Pokemon is going to be Gible, which evolves into Garchomp. This has relevance as a raid attacker as both a Dragon type as well as a Ground type. It also has relevance in the Open Master League. Now if you do actually want to run this as a Dragon type Pokemon, you want to go with Dragon Tail plus Outrage, but if you want to run this as a Ground type Pokemon, you need to have the exclusive Calm Day moveset Earth Power. That pretty much covers all of the type grunts. Now let's go over the Rare Grunt male and the Rare Grunt female, and their dialogue is going to read "Winning is for winners." From the male grunt, you're going to have access to Chikorita, Cyndaquil, and Totodile. When you evolve them into the respective evolutions, you're going to have Meganium, Typhlosion, and Feraligatr. Every single one of these Pokemon has relevance in the Open Great League and the Open Ultra League. That being said though, each of these Pokemon do also require their Legacy Calm Day moveset, so Frenzy Plant for Meganium, Blast Sprint for Typhlosion, and Hydro Cannon for Feraligatr. Basically out of all these Pokemon though, Feraligatr is the most important one to focus on if you are able to get it. It's currently ranked as the #1 Pokemon to use in the Open Ultra League meta, and it's also really good to use in the Open Great League. So once again, that is going to be the male grunt, but we also have the female grunt, which actually has a whole bunch of different stuff going on here. So the female grunt is actually the most challenging one, I would say, and that's going to have Snorlax plus a bunch of top level Pokemon. So you have Poliwrath, Gardevoir, and Snorlax in the second slot, Gyarados, Dragonite, and Snorlax in the final slot. You can only encounter a Shadow Snorlax, so if you actually defeat this grunt, this Rocket Grunt is going to be very resource intensive if you don't actually have that much to work with. So if you see this Rocket Grunt, you could also just skip it if you don't actually care that much for Shadow Snorlax. It's not that good anymore in the Open Great League and the Open Ultra League. The main chase for this Pokemon is going to be that potential hundo to use for the Open Master League. That is actually really good to have. And then finally, our last grunt is going to be the Decoy Grunt. So basically what you want to do is you want to equip the Super Rocket Radar, use that to find Giovanni's stops, go to them, check to see if it's going to be a decoy. If it's actually Giovanni, do not battle him. Go to the next spot, check for the decoy, rinse and repeat. You're essentially just going to be farming Shadow Shiny Bellsprout, guys, and then also components as well. So by doing this, you're going to be able to get components even faster, which means faster rocket radars and more encounters with the team leaders. Now from the team leaders, guys, we actually have an amazing rotation right now. So from Arlo we have Beldum, from Sierra we have Ralts, and then from Cliff we have Galarian Zigzagoon. Now I did mention this at the beginning of the video, but once again the shiny rate on these team leader Pokemon are going to be 1 out of 64, so the best chance to potentially get a Shadow Shiny in the game. When it comes down to it, you're going to be focused on 2 hunts, the Shadow Hundo Beldum, or potentially the Shadow Shiny Beldum. Now we have actually had Shadow Shiny Beldum in game before, but for Ralts and Galarian Zigzagoon, these are going to be new Shadow Shinies. So personally speaking guys, I am going to be hunting that Shadow Shiny Ralts, and pretty much every single main series game I've played, I always hunt down Shiny Gardevoir. Now we do also have Galarian Zigzagoon, which evolves into Obstagoon, and this was actually pretty good in PvP before the counter nerf. It's definitely going to be the weakest in this team leader rotation, but it's honestly a really cool shiny to have. Like, it just looks awesome. So I mean, really when it comes down to it, all the team leaders have good Pokemon during this rotation. Now finally we do also have Shadow Heatran, which is going to be available from Giovanni using your Super Rocket Radar. Once again, if you only have 1 Super Rocket Radar and you want to farm the Decoy Grunts, do not actually use this to get Shadow Heatran just yet. You have a bit of time to actually get this Pokemon, so don't worry about it. Now how do you actually get the Super Rocket Radar to actually get Shadow Heatran? So for newer players out there, you get this from the Seasonal Special Research Galar Calling. There's actually going to be no time limit to complete this quest, but you have to claim this before the end of November. Now going back to Shadow Heatran, this is going to be one of the top fire type attackers in the game, so if you actually decide to get it, it's going to be totally worth it. Now Heatran does also have access to its signature moveset Magma Storm, which is really good to have. Flamethrower is going to be slightly worse, but still very relevant if you decide not to give it the Elite TM for Magma Storm. And then taking a look at PvP, it's currently ranked at number 22 in the Open Master League, which is actually better than the regular counterpart. So yeah, if you guys actually want to get yourself a Shadow Heatran, I would actually recommend it, but if you already have a bunch of really good fire type attackers, you may want to hold on to your Super Rocket Radar. So best of luck out there hunting down these new Pokemon over the next few months in Pokemon Go, and if you actually want to know what are the best Pokemon to use against these Rocket Grunts, then check out this video right here.